Hi, welcome to Briefest Conspiracy. This is part 2 of my chat with Daniel on everything psychic, remote viewing. Stephen Greer gets a mention this week and talking to aliens. So, if you are new to the channel, please like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Really helps us out.
The CIA has a declassified file. It's I forget what the main topic. I think it's a massive file. It's like 800 pages. A massive report, and I think it's on the impact of electromagnetics on communication. I wrote an article about it, but it's something that sounds fairly mundane, and I think for the most part is. But except for the very first part, they talk about their studies of the impact of geomagnetic forces on telepathy. So they're like, I find it kind of funny that it's the first thing they talk about. And then it's, I think, really technical, mundane stuff that has nothing to do with psychic stuff for the rest of the 800 or something pages. Okay. But I mean, I'm sure you've heard this, and I'm not sure about this theory, but I know that Boyd Bushman and Dr. Dan Burrish, I think they were with Lockheed Martin, that they said that the aliens are us from the future, and that's what we should expect from an evolutionary perspective down the line. And I personally think they're either extraterrestrial or interdimensional or some combination thereof. But yeah, I mean, I think that their bodies become frailer and their heads and their brains get bigger. I actually did have someone remote view a cattle mutilation once. It was nice. It was one of the very earliest ones in 1897. I forget what state it was in, but it was Alexander Hamilton was his name, not the famous politician. It was just some farmer, and it's notable, I think, because the cattle mutilation phenomenon was not really popularized until the 70s, I think. But this was in 1897, and he described these weird creatures in an airship, and they lasso one of his cows and just yank it up, and then he gets caught on his fence or something, and he had to cut the fence, and then it carried his cow away, and then they found the scattered remains some days later, the person I had remote view it said that he got the sense that there was some kind of harvest going on. I mean, I'm not sure. I personally, I don't think. I mean, as ugly as the cattle mutilation phenomenon is, and I think that they're doing it for, and this is just my best guess. I mean, who really knows for sure? But I think it's for some kind of scientific purpose. I don't think that they're trying to be. I don't think it's sadistic or cruel.
I honestly believe they wouldn't be benevolent. If anything, if aliens were visiting us, and I think the universe is probably full of life, but I think 99.9% of it is probably bacteria, like it is on the Earth, to be honest. But I think everywhere we look on Earth, we find life. And I think everywhere we look in the universe, we'll probably find something, but it'll be slight. But I imagine that intelligent life is probably quite a lot rarer. It requires a lot of lucky things to happen in order to be able to evolve to the point where you become. I mean, we consider ourselves intelligent. Maybe we're still babies wandering around, moving towards it, capable of being intelligent, maybe. So I think, honestly, if there was alien life out there that's intelligent, and when you start looking at the numbers of how many stars there are and how many planets, you'd have to be an idiot to think that we were alone in the universe. So I'm absolutely certain aliens would come here, would be interested, and they would want to help us. I joke on our last video, and it's half a joke, really, but not really. That I watched. Have you ever seen that Cowspiracy documentary? And it's about how we're basically destroying the planet for cows, for beef. Right. One of the things was they said if we got rid of all the cars tomorrow, we could reverse greenhouse effects in about 60 years. If we got rid of all the cows tomorrow, we could reverse in about 30 years. That's how much of an impact they have on our greenhouse effects. So I sort of half joked, what if the aliens are coming here trying to figure out why we're destroying the planet over cows? They're looking like, what? This cow? Why are they so fascinated with it? I mean, or maybe there's some sort of scientific thing that they're trying to actually help us. Do you know what I mean? It's and
Yeah,
that's just one part of it. And
a lot of
just thought,
a lot of experiencers claim that they've been explicitly told just that by ETs. There's a pretty a well-known case. I think it's not as well known as it should be. In 1994 in rural Zimbabwe, it was Rua, the city of Rua. There were a whole bunch of school children claimed to have been visited by these greys, and the greys telepathically told them, "You guys are destroying the environment. Your technology is out of control." And Dolores Cannon, I think it was her. She pointed out that there's a strong correlation between the presence of dangerously high radiation and cattle mutilations.
yes.
And that's why Dr. Joseph Burks prefers to call them cattle dissections, because he doesn't think there's anything nefarious about it. That they're basically intergalactic environmentalists, and they're studying the presence of radiation in such and such an area and its impact on biological material. But
and again, that makes sense. That when I looked into cattle mutilations, one of the things I said, I agree with you. I found cases going back into the 1800s quite easily in England as well. I found quite a famous case where 100 sheep were mutilated in a night in 1880 something. There's all sorts of cases like that. But in almost all these cases, you see radiation, you see electromagnetic things, in genuine ones anyway, electromagnetic distortions and things, burns. I always think it's really interesting that when you get one of these cases that I honestly think a lot of cattle mutilations cases are probably just natural phenomena. The cow swells up, the skin bursts, it then desiccates, and it looks weird. When you see the cases, though, when they see the cow one day and then they find it the next day mutilated, then you've got to have a look and go, well, that's not possible. There's no natural way that happened, sort of thing. So in those cases, you see a lot of situations where other animals won't come near the animal, won't come go near the cow. They scavenger birds, and there's like 20, 30 meter radius. It always seems to be 30 meters. When I was looking into this, I couldn't believe how many times it come up when there's 30 meter radius, 30 meter radius, 30 meter, and I'm like, that's got to be something. But there's 30 meter radius where animals will not go near this damn cow.
Yeah,
they know something we don't.
Yeah, the mutilations on the ones that appear to be authentic ET are, as I'm sure you know, very bizarre. That all of their blood is gone, but no vascular collapse.
Is that no vascular collapse?
Yeah.
So just have to interrupt you. That's fascinating, because that shouldn't be possible.
Yeah.
That shouldn't happen. There should be vascular collapse. So that just basically means it was really quick.
Yeah, and I think they have made vital organs missing with no apparent incision. But with respect to the number of intelligent species in the universe, I think you're right that it's a tiny, that relatively speaking they make up a tiny proportion of they occupy a tiny proportion of the universe, but that's on a relative scale, and it's nevertheless, I think, a lot more than most people think or realize. One of the main remote viewers, and he teaches remote viewing, and he's a former Sergeant First Class Lynn Buchanan, and he's gone on record recently. He said that he was one of the remote viewers tasked by the government to research extraterrestrial phenomena and determine, are they a threat? If so, which ones are a threat? And he did verify that at least 4 of what I call the so-called usual suspects are there are actual beings that meet the physical description, and those are the Nordics. Basically they look like Norwegians, I guess, and the Greys, different kinds of gray, reptilians, and the mantids. So there's supposedly bipedal reptilians, and I don't buy into the weird David Icke conspiracy stuff. I mean, that's sort of what I was alluding to before, that and I do think a lot of this is done deliberately, but I don't know if David Icke is himself a CIA asset, but I think
he's crazy.
Yeah,
I've met him. He's crazy.
It's hard to tell though. It's hard to tell if somebody like Alex Jones or David Icke is a
think they're both. I think Alex Jones is very different. I think Alex Jones really likes being famous, and he's found a way to do it. Yeah, I think David Icke is a very intelligent man. He's very intelligent, with some mental health issues.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible.
When you watch him in an interview, he's like sensible, crazy, sensible, and he's like, like 3/4 into the interview, I'm like, yeah, I think he's right. Oh my god, this is crazy. Oh, the reptilians did. Oh, for God's sake, Dave! Like, you had me. You wouldn't have ruined it. But
what Lynn Buchanan says, and he says that there are benevolent instances from all known ETs. So there are, so David Icke has this view of reptilians as very diabolical, but apparently there are plenty of them who are perfectly friendly and maybe even indifferent, like they're just minding their own business, doing their own thing. But Lynn Buchanan specifically correlated his task that he said he was given was to determine the relationship between their motivations and their psychic ability, and that some ETs have very impressive psychic ability, but only at short range, whereas we and some of them, humans would fall into the category of basically unlimited range. That I guess our psychic ability is within the non-local realm, and we can just remote view a black hole a million light years away within a fraction of a second, and there are some who there are highly psychic ETs who are benevolent and want to help us, and then there are psychic ones who, some of the ones who are allegedly not so friendly, see us as a potential threat if we were to cultivate these abilities to a higher degree. And the CIA's Ingo Swann and Pat Price were both tasked with remote viewing underground ET bases, and I guess making inferences about the relationship between psychic abilities and ETs and the implications of these things for their attitudes towards us.
So why do you think then, if there was an ET species that did fear us, did fear our capabilities, were actually already visiting us? I mean, assuming in that case they would be significantly technologically more advanced than us.
Oh yeah.
Why absolutely. Don't they just wipe us out?
I've wondered that as well, and I know that Command Sergeant Major Robert O'Dean, he's talked about remote viewing ETs as well. He was I think an Allied commander in NATO, and he said that he was told that their conclusion was that if they were a threat, then we would have been wiped out a while ago, and based on that, those over him concluded that they were not a threat. But I think that if even though there might hypothetically, I guess, be some who want to exterminate us, and I'm honestly, I'm biased. I'm biased in a positive direction to you. I would like to meet them, and I'm more than willing to take the chance that they might eat me or whatever. I don't care. But the thing is that we apparently do have ETs who are very friendly and very powerful, and who act as our protectors.
Protectors, yeah. That's where I was wondering. That's where I was going with that. Really, I was wondering if I was a huge fan of the Stargate TV show, and because I always think whoever wrote that show was a huge conspiracy nut. I mean, they knew every conspiracy is in that show, every conspiracy theory. And one of the things was that the Goa'uld weren't allowed to destroy humanity because the Asgard wouldn't let them. They had a treaty sort of thing. And they said, so the Asgard, the Goa'uld kept trying to batter us, but kept trying to do it in sneaky ways. And I've always wondered if maybe that's a similar sort of thing. You would have a species become here that sort of sees life, an intelligent life, and maybe is quite rare. Like you said, there still might be billions of species out there, but I mean, relatively rare on a galactic scale.
Right.
And they would want to protect that life. They would want us to, but maybe, like I say, not want to get involved. They maybe don't want to sort of come out and say, okay, you are part of this galaxy, and because it would, God knows psychologically what that would do to 90% of our population. I think 10% of our population would go, yes, I knew it, fantastic, and the other 90% of us would freak out and refuse to go to work, and I don't know. But I've always wondered if there is that element. But if there are several or more species visiting us, they're going to have different agendas potentially.
Yeah, what I found really interesting and surprising about what Lynn Buchanan said is that it doesn't seem to be a species thing, as to put it simply, that there are positive and negatively oriented ETs within all known species. So you have some greys who are friendly and maybe some who are not so friendly. And I know a lot of these the more woo-woo new age types say, oh, well, the Nordics, they're the Norwegian supermodels from Pleiades, and they're the healers. They're very friendly. And apparently not. There are hostile humanoid-looking ones, just like there are friendly ones. And you have 8-foot-tall praying mantises who some are friendly and some are not. The in some of the declassified CIA files, and you can find these files on the CIA's own website. This is not like a conspiracy theory. They had Mel Riley and. He's vice commander of the Mohicans now, by the way. He sort of lives a quiet. And you had Joe McGonigal and a few other people remote view the alleged underground alien bases that are currently on our planet. And you have some supposedly in Alaska, you have some in Australia, Zimbabwe, South America. I think there's one in the Argentinian mountains. And most of the Pat Price and Ingo Swann determined that at least some of these bases might have, the beings there might have been hostile, or at least controlling and influencing us in a way that maybe not necessarily evil or hostile, was at least exploitative. And these beings looked a great deal like humans. They actually look roughly like they seem to bear quite a resemblance to this is going to sound funny, but the engineers of the Prometheus and Covenant. Yeah. And
like they were made out of wax or something, though, so they had that like very
they're very pale, hairless, but very tall and physically robust. And that's basically how they're described when the Mel Riley and Joe McGonigal were tasked with remote viewing the face on Mars in the Cydonia complex 1 million BC. And that's basically, and there's a CIA file for that too, and that's what they described basically. It basically looks like in the engineers. And the CIA file seems to imply that they headed to Earth after some kind of geological storm that destroyed their civilization on their planet. So,
I know the David Icke theory, and there was a war, wasn't there? That's the one of the theories. The Sidonians had a conflict with the other race. There's basically the reptilians and another race, and we became came here, and then the other one was on the planet, the fifth planet that's now was destroyed, that now became the Kuiper Belt and all that. I never really went for that, to be honest.
Yeah, when it comes to the UFO lore, I tend to be very skeptical about. Yeah, different people push all kinds of narratives. Like some people say, the W-56 Amanesia, the 1950s contactee case with Stefano Breccia and Bruno Sammartino. They say that the Nordics they made the Greys, and the Greys are artificial intelligence that went out of control. But then some Dr. David Jacobs says, "Oh no, it was the mantis beings who made the Greys, and and this is what they're doing, and this is their intention." And I tend to be I'm very agnostic when it comes to the lore and mythology and what's really going on. I tend to be, I'm very data driven, and if a remote viewer says, this is the description we got, this is the sense we got, I tend to approach that with, I take it seriously, but also approach it with a great deal of caution. And I don't like to make generalizations about, this is what's going on. Because that's where what I described before about people having different kinds of, I guess, heritable modules of but biases based in their temperament and personality. A lot of them are automatically going to latch onto this narrative that's really not verifiable at all. That it's the reptilians and they're from what is it, like the Draconians, and they're interdimensional demons and all this weird stuff. And I'm willing to say that I think there's strong evidence that there are beings that meet the physical description of a lot of these accounts that we get, but beyond that, I simply don't know. And I think most of them are benevolent, but I could be wrong, and I hope they're nice.
Yeah, let's hope so. Hold off Thanos and we'll be gone. We haven't actually talked about remote viewing as much as we planned to, but just one question. You just jumped into my mind then when you were talking about verifying. Do you get more than one person to try to remote view an object? So I mean, if I forget what you call it. Did you say a tasker?
Yeah.
So is that the person that then has the object and then you'll send that out to somebody to remote view and say, okay, I want you to remote view. You put a number on it, you said, don't you? But I'm wanting them to remote view this. The number's 69. But can you get more than one person to remote view and then try to hopefully get some crossover and so that you can actually verify that it's working, sort of thing?
Oh yeah, and that's one of the things that I think makes it such a profound thing, that you really are able to independently replicate these results across the board with totally independent remote viewers. There is a risk, though, that has been found in the research, that it's possible for one remote viewer to get the target totally wrong, but somehow there ends up being a telepathic overlay in which his incorrect remote viewing influences that of everyone else's. So they all get it wrong in the exact same way, and that's so that would be.
We see that in psychology, though, don't we? We sort of see that one person can influence a group completely unintentionally and drag emotions and feelings when someone is trying to commit a task, sort of thing, one person can completely.
What I found kind of amusing is that some of the critics and skeptics of remote viewing have pointed out that telepathic overlay occurs, and it does occur sometimes, but it's amusing because it's not really a critique of psychic ability, because it's proof that it is nevertheless a kind of high strangeness, a kind of weirdness going on. But that's why ideally you want to be able to empirically verify the contents of the target in a scientifically conventional way. You want to be able to
Mm.
look in the drawer and see if if what's there is really what they described, and very often it is. You just have to be careful about telepathic overlay, which can occur.
With the is that? I mean, like saying, I'm just asking questions, but is that maybe because one psychic is stronger than others, and he's literally able to push his view across them, even though he's wrong?
Yeah, that is what's been suggested. I'm not sure how. I've been toying with this idea of a hypothetical PsyQ, where because people do differ in their psychic abilities and their potential, at least. That and there seem to be certain personality and temperament traits, such as trait absorption, openness to experience, this construct of transliminality, where I guess your boundaries between conscious and unconscious are very thin, and you tend to be hypersensitive to both internal and external stimuli. These traits seem to predispose people to greater psychic ability, and I think what's been suggested is that some people inadvertently kind of, if you're strong enough, you can strong arm the session and wrestle the other remote viewers into an incorrect view of what's going on.
I wonder if it's not even well, I imagine it's not even a conscious thing.
Oh no. One of the main theoretical models is that of how remote viewing works is that there's some kind of higher dimensional unconscious. I don't know if you might articulate it in terms of like Carl Jung's collective unconscious or Roberto Assaglioli's higher self, or these different kinds of models, but there seems to be a higher dimensional or transcendent element of human subjectivity. And what I personally believe is that the way it works is you're basically trying to distract your left brain while I think of it as kids passing notes in class and trying to avoid the teacher seeing them. You're trying to trick.
Yes. I can understand that, and from I say not knowing, when I did my psychology degree and said they reckon we understand about 20% of the brain, we don't understand 80% of the brain, but the problem comes in that we don't understand what we don't understand, so we don't even know where to begin to try to understand the other 80%, and that's kind of what I was thinking there when you were talking. Was this? We have those parts of the brain, like the executive function, things like this, that seem to be desperately trying to control everything else,
right,
and overwhelm everything else. Similar with we've got like the dorsal and ventral systems with the way you think. The very quick and stupid system, and then a much slower but more intelligent system in your brain. And it feels like also that we almost want to try to tap into the more. I was going to say natural, but that's not the right word. But the more, almost the thicker version, the quick. We want to tap into that. I'm not finding the right word, and I apologise. I'll edit all this out. But that instinctual part of the brain, maybe that's what I was looking for. Instinctual.
Yeah, definitely. The I forget what his name is. He has the same name as me, Daniel something. But he has that book, Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, I think it's called. I think that's one of the main works in which this concept is articulated, and it really does get into the area of the unknown unknowns, because although it is true that we're tapping into the quick and stupid, it turns out that what we thought of as the quick and stupid is actually quite intelligent in a way that ends up violating a lot of what we consider common sense beliefs about reality from a normally like a materialist and mechanistic point of view, so yeah, I mean it does involve tapping into that, but what that agency even is that we're tapping into is very bizarre from a so-called common sense point of view.
Yeah.
And it's not really clear. I mean, I think this Courtney Brown, who developed the SRV protocol that I use, refers to it as the subspace aspect of the self, and he actually gets that term from the Urantia book, which is kind of a crazy. I mean, it's an unusual book. But he doesn't endorse all the material in it, but he says that at least in this respect, it's correct, and there is I don't know if we have like a higher self that reincarnates, or if there are actually no individuated selves at all, and we're just sort of dissociated, sort of alternate personalities, or different perspectives of one mind, and we sort of, I guess, tapping into the subspace aspect through intuition could be we have this very contracted perspective, but then we go into the mainframe or the database itself, which has all conceivable knowledge, and then we just take what we want and then go back into our normal perspective.
That's amazing. Daniel, I'm genuinely so happy we had this conversation. I do have to go because I promised my wife we'd cuddle up and watch a movie tonight. So you always do what your wife says.
Of course.
That's the one rule that I learned. Nobody had to teach me that. I learned that all on my own. I can't thank you enough. And I do want to try remote viewing, right?
Oh yeah.
We need to have a go.
Absolutely. I'll send you some material on it, and you can go ahead and try.
I also love that whenever I speak to people that have the same passions as me and the same interests, start one conversation, never goes the way you think it's going to.
Yeah.
You're always going to think. In a few weeks, I'm going to do an episode on Stephen Greer as well, and I would love your input on that if you've got time.
Oh yeah.
Because I would love to know you.
I've written quite a bit on coherent thought sequencing, the use of telepathy to contact ETs. I think he makes a lot of claims that I don't think he can verify, but I am very on board with this idea that there is one mind and that reality is paraphysical. We are all interdimensional beings with a physical aspect, and then one that goes beyond that, and that these ETs we're contacting are much more in tune with the para part of the self rather than only the physical. And the use of telepathy in contact actually originated in the modern era in the 1970s in Peru. A lot of indigenous Peruvians were developing this, and they take it very seriously. They're very I mean, they'll spend days in meditation and preparing for it. So it's but I have written a bit on Dr.
I would love to be. I'd love your input. That would be amazing.
Absolutely.
We must speak again. Because I cannot tell you how much I've enjoyed it.
I've enjoyed it
honestly.
A lot too.
Yeah, especially after my team just lost. Gutted to quite one of our big rivals. So it's a bit like crap. So this is cheered me right up. So thank you very much.